Welcome to the Sportlight podcast for parents, coaches, and athletes. The Sportlight refers to the time in an athlete's life when they have increased ability to affect the culture around them and the increased opportunity to learn life's lessons through sports. This podcast aims to help parents and coaches capitalize on their athletes' precious time in the Sportlight. The Sportlight podcast is brought to you by Especially for Athletes program.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sportlight podcast. We're so grateful that you would join us today. Today, we're going to talk about one of our core principles of Especially for Athletes, and that is the principle of win the hour. And recently, we heard a video by legendary coach Nick Saban, where he talked about the importance of not looking backward and not looking forward, but really concentrating on what is right before us. And so to begin today, we just want to play that video for you and then share some thoughts on it that we have in relation to a concept that we call win the hour. And so first, here's that video.
Especially for experienced players and young players for different reasons. It's really important that they're able to focus on what they control today. We have so many players here who get frustrated about what happened yesterday, or they get a little complacent because they had success yesterday, and then we get some players who are worried about what's going to happen in the future, and really the things that you do today correctly, making the right choices and decisions, having the right work ethic, preparing yourself to go out and play at a high level on a consistent basis. That's what really prepares you for the future. So understand that's what you control, and that's what's going to help you most in your future. You know, all of us are a little bit addicted to tomorrow. You know, I'll quit smoking tomorrow, I'll go on a diet tomorrow, I'll lose weight tomorrow, I'll start studying tomorrow. But really, making it happen today is the way you improve. That's the way we'll get better. That's the way you'll create more value for yourself. And that will really help our team, get a lot better as well.
All right. So there's the words from Nick Saban. And I love that phrase that too many of us are addicted to tomorrow. And so, sometimes that addiction to tomorrow keeps us from really progressing. Also, that looking into the past and seeing things as they were in the past and worrying about that, about all those things. There's nothing that is further from our control than what has happened in the past. And sometimes we not only get lost in the past, but also as we look forward to the future of our life, some people get lost. I love how he said that, in the future. They start worrying about tomorrow. And what sometimes we all forget is that the only thing that we have control of in our life is today. And especially for athletes, we actually break that phrase down a little bit more than Coach Saban did in this video. We don't use the phrase win the day, as you might see, some popular phrases on t-shirts and things like that. As we wrote our first book, we started to write a chapter entitled First Things First, but we realized that priorities are kind of a tricky thing. That sometimes as we're placing our priorities out there, that those priorities could shift from hour to hour. And so as we've gone around the country and teaching athletes to organize their priorities, we realize that it's just not as simple as saying, this is my first priority, this is my second, this is my third. Setting priorities in life are more complicated than that. And while there may be some things in life that in the end will matter most, we believe that a person's priorities shift throughout the hours of each day. And so a person must constantly ask themselves, what should be my top priority right now at this very moment? And so the phrase that we came up with that we think helps simplify this difficult concept, you've probably heard us talk about it before on previous podcasts, is win the hour. Now, if you're winning the hour, it means that you're identifying in each moment of each day what should be your top priority, and then you give your best effort to that thing. And we found that if one can master that skill, that they will have a so much more balanced and successful life. So, for example, when a young person is sitting in a math class, it's obvious what their top priority should be for that portion of the day. It should be math. A teacher deserves your respect and attention, and your academics deserve your best efforts in that moment. A youth shouldn't be texting or playing on their cell phone or talking without permission to their friends around them. In order to win that hour, they really need to focus on that moment. So we go around and we talk with athletes and we talk to them about this math class example. And we say, so what would it look like for you to win the hour during a math class? And we get great answers. First of all, it's just giving utmost attention to those concepts that they need to master in class. It might mean, okay, if I was going to win the hour, I might sit at the front of a class. I might have the courage to raise my hand and to ask a question of the teacher, and to not let things move on without me understanding, just because I'm afraid of looking silly if I'm the only one who doesn't understand it. And so we really get into the nitty gritty with people. But now think of that same student. Okay, so they finish up with their classes, and let's say that math class was the last period of their day, and now they head off to practice. Well, now practice becomes your top priority. You need to win the hour in practice. You'll do that by focusing, by working, by giving your team and your coach your best effort. And then there's another transition, right? So you leave practice and then you go home from practice. Well, how do you win that hour when you go home? How do you win that time period? So maybe as you ask yourself that question, we have these discussions with our athletes. Sometimes they say, well, maybe it would be like, well, helping my mom with the dishes or talking to a sibling. And so the key of the concept of win the hour is not only not to live in the past, in yesterday, or in the future, in tomorrow, but to live in that very moment, to be present, and to ask yourself many times throughout the day, what should be my highest priority right now? What do I need to do to win this hour? And in order to do this well, you have to be super honest with yourself, brutally honest, because we all will have the tendency to try to pretend that something that we enjoy doing, well, that's my highest priority. Right now, my highest priority is I need to take a break and play a video game and decompress a little bit. And that might be true sometimes, but we have to be really honest with ourselves. What's the best thing we could be doing with this moment in this hour? And so it will take as much discipline to win the hour in other aspects of your life as it will to win in sports. And so think of those early morning workouts, or the last reps while you're lifting, or the fourth quarter of a game. Those times in sports where your body wants to quit, but you push through and finish. And then think of how good it feels to be exhausted but victorious. If we can learn to discipline ourselves and buckle down and do what needs to be done to win the hour in all aspects of our life, regardless of how badly we may or may not want to do something, it really does create a winning mentality in our life. And most everything that is precious to people did not come easily to them. Incredible accomplishments do not come overnight. An incredible life is built by asking ourselves in each moment, what comes first right now? What do I need to do to win this hour? And so, of course, there's time for rest and recuperation, but we need to do that on purpose. We need to plan it, not just let it happen by default. Don't just let days come and go without improvement. If we sit back and wait for life to happen, not much will happen in our life. And so there are very few things that feel as good as a well-earned rest, but make sure we plan it. Another thing we talk about, in order to get started with Win the Hour, we often sit down with athletes and invite them to go through an exercise. And so we have them take a piece of paper, we have them fold it into thirds, and draw a line dividing them into 3 columns. And on the left side of the paper, we write as detailed of an itinerary of our day as we can. We include every class, we include lunch, practice, coming home from practice, just everything that they can think of. In the middle column, we write, okay, what is my top priority during that time? And then in the right column, we write something specific that we're going to do to win that hour. And so as we have them go through this exercise, it's pretty cool to see, that, okay, what am I doing? What should be my highest priority during that time? And what do I have to do to really win it? So after we have them do that, we challenge them to go 16-0. And so here's what we mean by that. There's 24 hours in a day, and it's recommended we get 8 hours of sleep at least, right? So that leaves 16 hours. So going 16-0 means that for all 16 hours of that day that we are awake, that we can look at those columns, say, okay, here's what I was doing. Here should have been my top priority. And then here's what I would have to do to win that hour. And so we have them look at that and say, judge yourself. To go 16-0, man, if you do that day after day after day, you're going to have a really successful life. Many of you listening to this will know Will Smith. He's one of the most successful actors of our generation. And he has gone from this goofy rapper to a sitcom star to the most bankable actor in Hollywood. His movies have grossed over $6 billion. And he told a story from his childhood that impressed us, and especially for athletes, that we felt fit very well with this principle, win the hour. So his dad made Will and his brother tear down and rebuild a brick wall in front of their father's business. And it seemed like an impossible task for the little boys, but they persisted. And after over a year, they finally completed the task. And so Will Smith shared what this experience taught him. He said this. He said, you don't try to build a wall. You don't set out to build a wall. You don't say, I'm going to build the biggest, baddest, greatest wall that's ever been built. You don't start there. You say, I'm going to lay this brick as perfectly as a brick can be laid. And you do that every single day, day after day, brick after brick, and soon you have a wall. And so that's what we're challenging people to do when we say win the hour, is kind of split their life up. Don't think of the whole big wall. That's thinking of the future, what that wall is going to be. But think of each hour as a brick, and then just try to lay that brick perfectly, hour after hour, day after day, and soon you will have built yourself a pretty incredible life. And honestly, not many are willing to do that. Most agree with the concepts we've talked about right now, but then they go away and they don't really change anything. They live a life by default instead of by design. They settle for mediocrity, and they lay enough bricks to be good, and then they're content. But we could be great if we concentrated on that going 16-0. And so, as we've had many athletes do this, and as we've done it ourselves, one thing that we have found that has been a discovery for some is they're really good at winning the hour in some instances. Like maybe, man, I really am a good practicer. I really do these things really well when I'm at practice. But I realize most of those times that I'm saying that I lost an hour, as they track that, it's during school. So I need to learn some skills, and I need to be better about winning the hour during school. And we start to realize, yeah, I'm being good at school and sports, but man, when I get home, I don't give my family my best. Or for those who are listening to this, who are professionals, I win the mornings, but there's something that happens after lunch. So I need to be more intentional about winning the hour after lunch, and I'll be a more valuable employee. Or when I come home, I'm not winning the hour with my kids, right? And so we'll not be perfect at this, but the closer we could come to the ideal, the better and more successful our life will be. And then it's important to realize that just like building a brick wall, if we lay one brick poorly, the rest of the wall is impacted. And so, for example, let's say you go to class and you decide to flirt with someone, or a young person does, instead of giving your best effort to that class, or you're lost on your phone playing a game, well, now you're behind. And now when you're on the field practicing, you'll be worrying about that homework you have. It'll take you a lot longer to do the homework because you don't understand. That will affect the time that you have with your family and friends. And so, sometimes laying one poor brick can really impact a life. And there have even been lives destroyed by one brick. People lay a brick and their reputation takes a huge hit because one brick was laid really, really poorly. And the other thing that we've noticed, by the way, is the unseen bricks. So it's easy for most to do good or to work hard and to give their best when their parents, teachers, coaches, bosses, or others are watching, right? But those who build wonderful walls, those who really lay this great wall for their life, are those that learn to work and to lay that brick perfectly when no one is watching. They don't need someone to be there to make them lay it perfectly. So they realize every brick impacts the wall, and they work hard whether or not their coach is watching. They study hard whether or not their teacher or parent are watching. They wake up early and work out even when no one knows about that. In the summer where no one's tracking it, they work on their craft. And while others are sitting around like bricks, successful people are laying bricks. And that's what makes people extraordinary, meaning better than ordinary. And so we knew one young man who went to a scout camp during the summer that we were working with, and he did not want to lose anything that he had gained weightlifting with his football team, but he wanted to go to the scout camp and it was okay for him to go. And so during that week, every morning before everyone else woke up, he was outside of his tent in the cool mountain air doing push-ups, lunges, sit-ups, some speed and agility drills. That's what we mean by those unseen bricks. Those who are willing to lay those unseen bricks usually end up being more successful. Ordinary people lay bricks well when others are watching. Extraordinary people lay bricks well when no one's watching. They're the ones that really care about how things are going in their life. They hold themselves accountable. And so that's how we've seen athletes become extraordinary that we coach in athletics and in grades. We've received letters from people that talk about how much their grades have improved as they've realized that they weren't winning the hour in their classroom. And so that this is just a great life lesson. And we love what Nick Saban said, that sometimes that past and the future, it just becomes way too much of our focus. If we'll focus on winning the moment we're in right now, then that will help us to build a better life. And so that reminds me of a letter we received, maybe to highlight this. Here's what the parent wrote us. I'm a parent, but I was very moved by the concept of win the hour that you discussed last night at the presentation. I wanted to share an experience that I had driving my children to school this morning. We had a little bit of a tough morning. One of my children took longer to get ready than she should have. It got to the point that my wife and I had to be pretty sharp with her to get her into my car in tears. I was driving and looked in the mirror at my kids. All three of them looked sad. I could have just went on and dropped them off at school, but it made me feel bad that my kids were going to get out of the car sad and then go face a difficult school day. This is when the win the hour concept popped into my head. I thought, okay, what do I need to do to win this hour? So an idea popped into my head. I plugged my phone in to my car and put on a pump-up song. And when the prelude started, I began to yell like someone was doing a starting lineup. All right, girls, are you ready to face the world? Bring it on, world. And I just went crazy in my car. I kept going and having no clue what I said from there. but I just completely freaked out like I was trying to pump my daughters up for the day. But the important thing was this. My girls began smiling and laughing. And when they got out of my car, they each gave me a kiss on the cheek and bounded happily into school. It was simple. It wasn't an hour long, but I know it got their day off to a better start. I feel like I won that hour. Thanks for teaching us that principle. It blessed my family today, and I'm confident that it will continue to do so if I will continue to ask myself, what can I do to win each hour of the day? Thank you, especially for athletes. You made my day today. So this concept of winning the hour is just something that, man, it applies to athletes, it applies to students, it applies to employees, it applies to fathers and mothers, it applies to all of us. We may not always go undefeated and go 16-0, but we should try. And if we do, we'll build a wonderful life. And so remember also, win the hour is it just really helps us to get the most important thing in our life. And right now we have so many things in our lives with phones and TVs and everything else that it's super easy to get distracted and lost in something that is way less important than the thing that we could be doing. And if we'll focus our life on the things that are the most important things, that will build a great life. So thank you so much for joining the Sportlight podcast this week. We hope you'll go forward and you'll win the hour this week. Ask yourself every hour, every time you transition, what do I need to do to win this hour? And if you'll do that thing that comes to mind, like Will Smith building the wall and lay that brick, it will lead to a wonderful, wonderful life. So we encourage you to do that. Keep your eyes up, do the work. Please share this podcast with others. Subscribe, rate it, leave a comment. Thank you. Eyes up, do the work.
This has been the Sportlight podcast from Especially for Athletes, sponsored by Coca-Cola. You can learn more about Especially for Athletes by visiting the website at especiallyforathletes.org. You can also learn more about the book, The Sportlight, by Shad Martin and Dustin Smith at especiallyforathletes.org/book.